Welcome to the Infill Podcast, where we interview the most interesting members of the 3D printing and maker communities, live and with audience participation. And now, here is your host, Jonathan Levy.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm not sure if our intro worked or not, but I'm really excited about this episode. So we're just going to go ahead and proceed. Before we do get started and I tell you about our guest, I do need to thank this episode sponsor for our special segment that we do every episode. What's Printing, Jonathan? Brought to you by Octo Everywhere. So you guys can actually see I have a couple things printing right now, or Millipede just finished. And to tell you guys how much I trust Octo Everywhere, I have a new profile on a new printer with a new filament and a model that I'm not sure is actually going to print correctly, but I am trusting Octo Everywhere's AI, and I can just remotely monitor it. And anyway, today we're talking about filament recycling. So if the print doesn't work out, I can always recycle the filament. Thanks to Octo Everywhere. You guys can check the link in the description, and you can get a free $25 credit. On to today's guest and why I'm so excited. You guys know that I care a lot about filament recycling and recycling 3D prints. Well, today we are joined by one of the most important people in the plastic recycling movement, at least in my opinion, Dave Hakkens of, well, One Army, but also Precious Plastic. And for those who don't know, I'm going to brag about Dave because I'm sure he's very humble, but Dave put out a lot of the designs that people all over the world are using, whether it's an injection molder, a shredder, the design that I'm using for a shredder. There's a bunch of other stuff as well. Hi, welcome.
Hey.
Really excited to have you here. I want to hear the whole backstory before we get in. I could totally geek out with you, I'm sure, about recycling. But first I want to hear, when did you get into recycling? When did you start to care so much about this? And how?
All right, cool. Yeah, I guess Pressure Plastic was a graduation project of my school. I was studying design, and I saw a lot of documentaries, I guess, of just plastic waste in the world, and I started traveling around, and you just saw plastic everywhere. So it was felt like a very useful, obvious thing to work on. Like, there's all this plastic waste damaging the environment. Let's do something about it. And that was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you care about plastic waste before? Did you have like a story growing up as a child where, obviously you're from the Netherlands, right? If I'm not mistaken. So
yeah.
I was literally in Amsterdam last week, very eco-conscious society. Did that play a role, or was it really, you were exposed to it? It sounded like a great idea for a project.
No, I think it's actually more like if you walk around in the Netherlands, you don't really see any waste because everything is sort of tucked in bins and like it's very clean. But I think it's more when you start seeing documentaries or travel other places of the world, you realize, oh fuck, there's plastic waste everywhere. I wasn't aware it was a thing. So I think I never really thought of plastic waste being a problem until I sort of saw it. And then you're like, whoa, okay, this is kind of a big global thing.
Totally.
Yeah, so it sort of at some point just came right at me. Yeah.
And so originally it started, I think, with just a handful of machines. What were those first machines that you guys designed? And then in the beginning, it was right away from the get-go, open source, sharing the machines, sharing the designs, right?
Yeah, so the goal was always plastic waste is everywhere in the world. So you want plastic recycling everywhere in the world. So you need, machines everywhere in the world. So instead of me going to each place to set it up, it felt very logical to do it open source because you can just share the knowledge. And the machines are all based on very industrial scale machines, just sort of simplified and in a way to make it yourself so they don't cost 100,000 euros. And that was kind of the essence of the start. So it started with, I think the really first one was an extruder machine, just so you can have some shredded stuff pooping out the plastic, which felt very magical to me, actually, that first time when I did that. Of course. And then an injector, which was a bit like, then you don't need the screw. So it was a bit of a simplified machine. And then you realize, okay, you also need a shredder, which was actually the most complex one to have good. So it sort of evolved a bit, and by now, then later on, we also developed a sheet press to make big sheets. So yeah, I guess there's still way more machines and things to develop in the area.
Totally.
Yeah.
And now you have, the simple version, then you have the Shredder Pro. You say we, so we jumped a little bit, I guess. It's a school project. At what point does it start picking up steam and other people get involved? Were the people who did all of this with you, were they also part of the school project, or it kind of picked up like a snowball?
Yeah, so when the school project was really, I guess there's an old video online somewhere of really the version one of the whole project.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember I thought, okay, cool, I have some machines to recycle plastic, and you give people a sort of an opportunity. And I put it online, and it's open source, everyone can start. But when I put it online, no one really cared. There were like two people, I think, that built a machine, which was really cool, but it was not really like everywhere in the world. And that was quite hard because I think, okay, should I just stop and maybe it doesn't make sense
Wow.
and move on? But I guess I figured maybe it was the documentation that wasn't really good. Like it looks interesting, but it's quite complex to actually build it. So then we made like then I wanted to make a version two. And then I also started to working a bit more with other people to think about, okay, how can we on the one hand improve the machines a bit, but also really make better documentation. So started making these tutorial videos, like step by step how to make the machine, make the blueprints a bit more like nice instead of just this random zip file. And that we call version two, and that actually went suddenly all over the world. Like, yeah.
Wow. And so, fast forward to today, do you have any indication? I mean, it would be so nice if you could just say thousands or tens of thousands of tons, but I'm sure you don't know how much the machines are actually being used. Do you have any idea? I mean, how big is the community? How many machines have people built? Do we have any grasp on how much plastic is being saved because of this school project?
Yeah, so we try to run. So it's really useful for us indeed to have this data, but it's really hard to measure, especially if everything is open source. You can just take
Right.
it and don't share anything back. So we try to have sort of an impact report where we ask the community to fill in some numbers. So, um, and it's on the website as well. You can see some more statistic, like it's in 65 countries around the world. I think last year they recycled 1.4 million kilogram of plastic. Also created a lot of jobs for people that are now sort of plastic recyclers that they didn't exist before. But we also know, like, we only know workspaces if they mention to us that they are a workspace, like on our map. And then out of them, only a handful really fills in all the impact data. So we know
Sure.
in a way there's more to it. But yeah, I guess it's one of our goals to try to get really all the data from the community. But it's a hard one.
It's super hard, and I think part of the challenge is a lot of people are like myself. I mean, we were talking about I went through the courses, found the bazaar, found the resources, built it, and then literally kind of it didn't occur to me that I could go back to the community and ask questions and da, da, da. I've been kind of trying to figure it out because you forget that in addition to the courses and the bazaar, there is this whole community of people working together, and it's still a very vibrant community, even though it was 10 years ago. You stepped away for a while. I think you're not full time on this. And recently you sent out a message about, like, hey guys, we need to talk. Fill the audience in. I actually sent it out to our entire audience, but for those who didn't see.
Cool, thanks. Um, yes, the project always developed in versions because we share everything open source online for free. Didn't get any money. So if we found some money, we develop a new version, we put it online, and then we had to do something else because we literally didn't have any money. So we, I don't know, did something else. So then at some point we found some money again and we developed a new version because we thought, okay, we really need to improve this. So like I mentioned before, in this version 2, it was all about improving the documentation. In version
Right.
3, we set up this bazaar, which is like an online marketplace that makes it easier for people to buy and sell machines and plastic. In version 4, we made like pro machines that can recycle more plastic. So we've
Right.
always been developing in like these versions, trying to improve the project, but never on a consistent base because we just didn't have any recurring income because of it all being open source. So the last version we made was like in 2020, version 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, there was sort of a little team set up to try to have it more of as a continuous operation. So trying to get some income to make sure they can continue developments. At that point, I kind of stepped out because I like a lot the development, but really running it as a steady business was not really my thing. Plus, I started another project called Project Camp. It's a different thing. But yeah, all of that, what happened in 2020 until now, which was a bunch of people, like a small team, trying to really crack the nut of how do you sustain this big open source hardware project? You give
Sure.
everything away for free. Can we get income for our salaries? So many things tried, many things learned, but it never really succeeded. So yeah, last year in December, um, and some team members left as well because it's just heavy. If you don't have any income, you cannot sustain. So yeah, that was all quite difficult. Um, and then last year in December, sort of sat down and figured out, okay, what are all the problems? What can we do? And I felt like the first step was to inform the community so they know, because some people think Flash Plastic is really rich because it has all these workspaces around the world, and even in the impact check, you create many jobs, and but nothing comes back.
Right.
So you had this weird misconception also what the project is and what it can afford. So we figured, okay, let's make sure we're all on the same page, and inform the community, and also think like, does a project like that need to exist? Maybe the job is done, like we built this community of recyclers, and that's it. Maybe you don't need to sustain a team because it's just online, um, or maybe there is still a lot more work for us to do.
Right.
So yeah, we sort of informed the community, asked their feedback and insights, and it was nice, a lot of support. And now we're thinking more, and I guess we also realized like the work is not done. There's still a lot of plastic waste in the world. Still less than 10% gets recycled. So it feels like way more work needs to be doing. So yeah, we're now in the process actually of starting to think of a version 5, which is a really big undertaking for us because the project is pretty big by now. So each version gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're actually
Wow.
soon going to release a plan for that and a way for people to help out. But it's currently being shaped.
So this is totally out of left field, but I want to say while we're on the topic is let me know how I can help. I care about this stuff so much. I don't have any engineering skills, as I sent you a picture earlier today. I managed to destroy one of your designs, so maybe I'm really good as a beta tester for worst possible use case, like lowest common denominator. How do we make the thing idiot proof? I don't know. Send it to Jonathan. He'll figure out a way to break it. But let me know how I can help, because I really care, and I have obviously a lot of insight into the 3D printing community, which is not the premier source of plastic waste, but they are people who are passionate about plastic. And let's keep it doesn't have to be now, but keep the lines of communication open, because I have a lot of ideas of different ways that we can make this work for my people, which is 3D printing
Cool.
people. With the response, it sounds like the community enthusiastically wanted you to continue. Has that, I ask because I care, not because I want to know, if you're getting rich off this, has that translated into support? Are people supporting you? Are companies now reaching out and supporting you?
Yeah, so people, even though we didn't specifically ask for it, we had some donations coming in. Um, yeah, some I guess new lines open up when you share a problem because people want to
Yeah,
help. But I think overall, like most of our community are plastic recyclers, and they're not necessarily very wealthy
sure,
people, and we even want them to spend the money on their own recycling business because we want them
sure.
to thrive. So we got some income from donations, which was cool, and it could sustain the team a bit longer. Also, so we can think of like what is the next step for this project. But we also realized if we really want to make a next version, we really need quite a bit more money to really get a team, set up a workspace again, assemble a lot of people, build software. So it's kind of a costly thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we got support, but in a way, we need more.
So this is
But
something I end up talking about a lot on the podcast and in my videos. Is like I think I'm more of a capitalist than a lot of other people in 3D printing. Like, I'm passionate about open source, but I also, have an MBA and understand the realities of running a business or an organization or whatever it may be. And the more I talk to designers of open source, the more I come to the conclusion that we need to change the culture. Meaning, open source is great, sharing things online is great, what isn't great is the culture that believes that open source equals free labor, people doing it for fun. Because I talk to more and more and more designers, whether it's really, I think we went deep into this with Jake England, who runs the Millennium CNC or Milo CNC project. So it's a fully open source CNC. They sell kits. You can make your own. You can buy a kit. They make a few bucks off the kit. But at the end of the day, what they need is monthly support to pay salaries to improve the product. And, you're going to get all those updates. And so I'm really trying, at least in 3D printing, whenever I highlight open source projects, to remind people like, hey, it's customary or it should be expected that if you use this, you should support on an ongoing basis. So, and I'm guilty when it comes to precious plastic. I support Clipper, I support Mainsail, all the open source software. I try to walk the walk and talk the talk, but I've been using your shredder for 6 months. I should be paying $5 a month to continue development of it. And that's something I really want to, at every possible opportunity, say to designers, but also say to my community is open source does not mean free labor. It means freedom of ideas. It means build upon these ideas. But if we want those ideas to be built upon faster, we should support the people who are driving them. Do you guys have a
I think that's
Patreon
kind of
or membership or anything?
Yeah, you can sort of, but we don't actively use it. You can make a donation, but I think in the end we see it a bit like it's like quite an important nut to crack, because I think many people believe in open source and many people try, and then at some point you have to do something else because you like some succeed but not many. So I think for us it's also kind of interesting to try with Precious Plastic to figure out like how do you sustain it. And I think the thing, I mean, I was never into this topic. I don't have an MBA in business, so I don't know much about it. But
Save
I think
your
it was
money.
also never. But I think it was also just never the focus. We were fully always about building stuff, developing the next version. And I thought always also it's like good if you give the things away for free, because people can have it. But I think I also realized throughout the time that you not being able to sustain yourself also means, you cannot improve or add improvements that people have or integrate feedback because you don't have a team. So in a way, you make the product for the people worse if you don't take care of yourself. And I think that's also like a valuable lesson that we learned. Like, it's not just for you, but it is for the entire community and the benefit of your operation continue. I think that's the lesson we learned now.
And I wholeheartedly support the idea of making it free, because especially you're doing something that's so important. There's more important things than money. Again, it becomes this kind of like, how do you support the project if you don't continue the project? But at the end of the day, like, if I say to you, or if we think in kind of objective reality, right? There's someone in Chad or Lesotho who, can barely afford to build the machine. Do we want them to build the machine and not support? Hell yeah. I think that's clear just from talking to you for a few minutes. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people like myself who are using this thing every day, and I can spare the money, and I want to support, and also I want to subsidize, because we are all living on the same planet. I want to subsidize the guy in Lesotho who's making the machine, and I want it to be free for him. So yeah, it's this cultural thing. And I've also found it's not just the consumers, as you said, it's also the designers who are like, well, I'm building on open source ideas. I want my stuff to be free. So it becomes uncomfortable to be like, it is 100% free, but it's expected. It's custom. I like to say customary. And I'm willing that into existence, because of course it's not customary to support open source projects. I want to make it customary. So I did a video last month on open source 3D printers that you can make yourself. I'm doing another one, and I've just started saying it. I'm going to say it until it's true. It's customary to support open source projects that you use regularly with regular donations. And I hope to make that a reality.
Yeah, no, it would be nice. Yeah, I think we also see it a bit like you really need to integrate these models, just where you can give something for free, but you find a way that some of that value comes back to you.
Totally.
But indeed, it's like a cultural shift also. Yeah.
Totally. So tell me about V5. Is this a secret, or what's in the pipeline?
Yeah, well, so I think it's like a quite a big plan because we throughout the years we had many things. It started with machines, but then we started developing products, and then we had a bazaar, so we had software. So by now the pressure plastic ecosystem is quite large. So if you want to make a new version, you have many things to work on. um, I think overall the hard part is a big part of the version is trying to make the organization financially sustainable, which is also a super boring thing and hard sort of to fund.
I can help. I
Yes.
can help with that. I have many ideas.
Yeah, so that's one of the, like, we sort of really actively trying to do few things that help that goal. And
Yes.
once we did that, we want to focus more on uh, yeah, how can we increase still the amount of plastic recycled, what always was our goal. And look more into what comes after that, like developing alternatives. It's the first
Right.
time I'm sharing anyone the version 5 goal. So
I love it.
this
I'm
is
really excited.
roughly the plan, what we're going to do, but we're going to release like a more detailed plan and a video soon.
Oh man,
So
I
it's
have
more
so
clear.
many ideas. I'm really glad that we're connected. You know, you're kind of like this mysterious figure on the internet. Like if when I first talked about precious plastic in my videos, and I was like, I think I'm gonna build this shredder, and like most of the comments were like, Dave disappeared years ago, and no one has heard from him. And then I know you're doing Project Camp. Tell folks about Project Camp as well, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. So I liked a lot what we did with Fresh Plastic. Like we develop stuff, we bring people together from all over the world. They have ideas. We develop a new version. We put it online, open source, so everyone has the knowledge. And we had a pretty cool workspace, but it was a temporary thing, sort of sponsored by a municipality as a gift. We had temporary housing, so we had a team of 50 people. And after version 4, everyone left,
Oh,
which was quite hard because, well, again, the project doesn't sustain, and you go from a big organization to nothing, which is quite heavy, like the scaling up and down. So yeah, and one thing I always had in mind, like, it's cool what we did with Fresh Plastic, like open sourcing knowledge on how to become a plastic recycler. But another topic I was always curious about, like living sustainable, like what does that
mm-hmm.
mean? You have all these different technologies to store energy or to build your houses or to organize ourselves as humans. Um, and it felt like it could apply a very similar methodology, which is it's useful information if you share it open source with the world. Someone needs to develop it. So let's set up that place, bring people together, and work on this topic and share everything what we do open source online for free, same as Fresh Plastic. So a few years ago, we bought a piece of land, like 10 hectares, and we started building this community that works on this. So every
Wow.
year, people can come to help out. Some people stay multiple years, some people stay for a short amount of time. And we develop all of these sort of things that we need and share it open source online. But it's a very long-term project. It takes a long time before you like regenerate the land or can give a good feedback if a house works with a new building method. So it's like a very long-term project, and you can, yeah, follow it. And
And
every
how
week we
is
upload a video on YouTube, so you can sort of follow really the process of it.
That's really cool. How is that project sustained? Because that I'm also super interested in.
Yeah. So one of the lessons learned from Project Camp is like, okay, or from Fresh Plastic is it's good if the project can sustain itself long term, because I think then you have an impact instead of having a short sprint and then die.
Sure.
So we really, that's why we have the land and build our own infrastructure, so your costs are pretty low. And we use YouTube at the moment, and that sort of sustains the whole development. I'm quite impressed by
Wow.
that, just by uploading a video each week. And more, actually, we also have Patreon supporters, which is super valuable. People that really continuously support the project and give it a bit of a financial backbone, because YouTube is a bit unstable.
Sure.
But yeah, gradually we built this whole community of people that also find valuable what we do, and that supports a lot the
Fantastic.
development on site. So yeah, each year it's growing a
Fantastic.
bit, and we can take on more things.
That is so cool. And I love the like taking the lessons from the challenges. Uh that's a good break point, I guess, to thank our main episode sponsor real quick, which is actually a very good segue. It's PCB Way, and the reason it's a good segue is because throughout my journey of building the precious plastic shredder, I managed to damage a lot of parts, but also I needed to customize, and we can talk about that. Customize how it worked, and make some different flange adapters and all different kinds of things because I didn't know anything. And invariably, PCBWay saved my butt like 15 times. They do metal 3D printing, all kinds of 3D printing, injection molding, CNC milling, which was super helpful. They do it all at great prices, great turnaround, fast, affordable. They're just fantastic, and I use them for anything that I need that I can't actually print myself in-house. So check them out. With a link in the description, you get money off your first order. So
Sounds like a
I'd love
useful
to...
sponsor.
Sorry?
Sounds like a useful sponsor.
Very, very useful if you don't have actual, CNC machines and stuff like that, or the skills to run them. So I'm curious how big a part of everything you do 3D printing is. I mean, obviously it's a pretty small source of plastic waste, but a growing one, but it's also a great way to use recycled plastic. Was 3D printing on the radar when you started this? Has it come on the radar? Do you do any 3D printing?
Yeah, so I studied product design as a background, so I was quite excited when first 3D printers came to make things. I guess I think in version 2, we developed like trying to make our own filament I guess I saw, okay, we have all this plastic waste and then you have 3D printer, but they all work with these new kinds of plastic that don't exist. So can we make it with like polypropylene, polyethylene? So I started making filament with that, with also the hope, I guess, that on the one hand you need the filament to be made, but also the printers to be able to work with these materials.
Right.
I guess throughout the years, I realized it's quite complex to actually develop this because the precision is, you need quite some precision in both the filament maker and the printer itself.
Right.
And the community around 3D printing grew a lot, and there were a lot of active development and people doing this. So as Precious Plastic, we kind of let go of that part because we felt this world is moving so fast and so many people already focus on this. I guess I would had in mind that, I don't know, 7 years later, there would be more solutions to it, whether it's printing with like the most common plastics we have or recycling the plastic from the 3D printers. I'm kind of surprised that there isn't that much. So one of the things in version 5 is actually to look more into the area of what can you do with printer plastic waste.
So I have lots to share on that as well. And I will say, I think from my experience, and my audience knows this because I've done, 6 or 7 videos on the series now, the challenge is actually not the extrusion, it's the shredding. And it's, I did some adaptations to the Shredder 1.1 to get it to work. But at the end of the day, it's just the cost, right? If you're an individual, or even if you want to shred for your local community, I managed to get the shredder setup down to about $1,500, all said and done, which I don't know if I did well or not well, but that's like a pretty big expense. The extrusion is pretty good now if you can get good regrind. For like 600, 700 euros, you can get the Artme extruder, and I print majority recycled plastic now, which I'm super proud of. Yeah, I actually brought home a spool to show you. I'm very pleased with myself. I mean, this is one measly spool, but like I get good quality out of my prints now. It's pretty, and white is not easy to do in recycling, so you can imagine. It's a good amount of labor. I will say that it's a good amount of labor. But I think with a big challenge, suggestion for V5 is bringing down the cost of shredders, right? So how can we power them for cheaper? I wonder.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I think we always see in Precious Plastic of how we would see it, and I think it's a bit different than how the 3D printing world works, because I think 3D printer is almost a bit the idea that everyone at home could have a printer and make things.
Right.
But we noticed with Precious Plastic that it's quite complex to really have a recycling process and do it properly and safe. And if everyone has it at home, it's a bit inefficient. So we see Precious Plastic operating a bit more like on a neighborhood level or a community level. So it's this person that sort of lives around like a bakery, no? Like there's one
Right.
bakery, not everyone bakes their own bread. It's a bit more effective, I think, for the plastic recycling.
I like that.
Um,
It's
so
true.
yeah, so then not everyone has the cost of building the machine, maintaining the machine, but it would be a place
Right.
where maybe once a month you go with all your stuff, you shred it, and it's done. So you can have a
Yeah.
better quality machine, and you don't need to do it yourself. I guess that's a bit where we're more towards with actually the processing of all the
Yeah.
plastic. Yeah,
And I think that
because it's
makes
a
a lot of
complex thing, as you
sense.
probably realized. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. And Prusa has, I know you guys also allow a map, but Prusa specifically allows, they have a map for centers or people, I'm one of them, that collect 3D printing waste.
Ah, cool.
Because not everyone wants PLA, for example, or PETG. Like industry uses PET, not glycolized PET. Um, so that's, I think, really, really interesting. And I can't tell you how many people like at trade shows come up to me and they're like, "Hey, I have a bag of PLA. Can I give it to you?" I'm like,
I have
"You're
a
not
lot
gonna."
of those people as well.
Right? They just
You have
come
a
up
back
to you.
point properly. Do you want it?
Now, in that model, do you think people extrude their own filament and make their own custom blends, or do you think we have like a recycling fabric where there are centers that go full process?
Hmm. Yeah, it's hard to say because many things are also still very much under development. With the 3D
Mm,
printer, you have many different types, and the
right.
printers develop. So I'm not really sure, to be honest, where it would go for 3D printing.
Yeah.
Also, because in 3D printers, you really have more home do-it-yourself level, but they also get quite more industrial
True.
scale.
I wonder if
Yeah.
we ask in the chat, like, how many of you would, if you could just drop off your, like, dry cleaning, to use the neighborhood model, if you
Mhm.
could just drop off your prints once every few months and come back in a few days and they'd be shredded up, or you exchange them for other people's materials that shredded up, how many of you would spend $700 on building your own extrusion setup versus wanting to just have it be fully done for you? Because I get the
I'd be
sense
curious to that.
from the people that I've talked to, like I've had people drop off plastic and I'm like, here, you want some regrind or you want some filament that I extruded before? I'll just trade you. You don't have to wait. They're like, no, I kind of want to see what my shredded 3D prints are going to look like.
Mm.
Like I want my colors and there's this like pride of the story. People want the story of the material, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm really excited to share. Like I've figured out a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes and figured out a lot of things that have to be just right, as you said, for the 3D printer to actually do it. But once you know those things, like simple things, like no high flow nozzles, period, ever. Right? Only your standard nozzles. No printers that have only simple um, clog detection, right? Or filament detection, like run out detection. You have to have clog detection because debris will get in. Maybe that's just the way I do my recycling, but so there, like once you have a playbook, I think it's totally doable. And I was talking with Rudolph from Recycling Fabrique. And they actually hired some folks at their local university to test this out. And they basically re-recycled, 100% recycled, no virgin material PLA 20 times, and at the 20th time tested the strength difference and it was 12%.
Oh
It's
well.
like this is, even though bioplastics get a bad rap, right, for recyclability, for our purposes,
Hmm.
it's wonderfully recyclable
Yeah.
if you have the playbook. How can
I think that's
folks,
also why we why we like open source. That I really feel like that often. I spend so much time figuring something out or building a machine, but then the end result is kind of if you write down all the mistakes, it saves another person so much work to not have to go to that whole shit of like tryouts and experiments. I feel that's really what open source is. You just make it much easier for the next person because you just make sure they don't have to go to the same hassle as you.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. And by the way, a lot, all the responses are like they want a service. So similar to Recycling Fabrique in Germany, who, by the way, is opening up a new branch in Turkey for the Middle Eastern market, which is kind of cool. I don't know if
Mm.
you know of them, but basically they collect your old 3D prints. They give you points based on weight and how well it's sorted, and then they shred it up. They have a whole proprietary process. They shred it up and turn it into brand new filament, which is just as good, just as color pure, because they have a color sorting process. They have some lines where they add 2% pigment, so it's 98% recycled, but they're doing, for those who don't know, 400 kilos a day of 3D
Nice.
printing. That's just out. In, they're getting way more.
And you have to ship it to Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, you would
Yeah.
have to ship it. So anywhere in Europe, it's pretty cheap. But their goal is, one in every, as you said, like every country at least.
Mhm. Yeah, makes
Because
sense.
you definitely do negate the benefit if you're using fossil fuels to ship it around.
Mm.
What are some of the ways that folks can support this movement if they're excited about it, if they're passionate about it?
So we have quite a big or like a community that shares the knowledge. So there are a lot of like things to download, research to follow, participate. So it's like community.preciousplastic.com. It's called.
Mm-hmm.
That's useful, just if that place is active and vibrant. And soon we would release this version 5 plan, and that's when we really need support, which on the
Mm-hmm.
one hand could be financially, or we also have a few positions where you can really come and help build this new version.
Wow.
So keep an eye on, I don't know actually where's the best to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on somewhere because we would
Right.
release that.
Yeah, I definitely got the impression. I mean, when I got going with it, I couldn't find like a tutorial for the Shredder 1.1. So fortunately, the person I bought it from gave me one in Spanish, which I managed to follow along. Maybe that's why my Shredder broke. It's because my Spanish isn't as good as I think it is. But it definitely feels like doubling down and now looking at this project as, okay, how do we sustain it is going to benefit the documentation and knowing where to find things and stuff like that. I think I probably discovered you guys in between those peaks, right?
Mm,
And it's kind of
yeah.
just all quiet.
Well, and I
Um,
think also what has happened a lot in the recent years is that in the beginning of the project, we really had to develop the machines because no one made those kind of machines. But throughout the years, more and more people made other kind of shredders and other kind of variations. So by now it's a bit messy because there's so many different variations. And if you come new into like the precious plastic world, it's kind of hard to see, I don't know, which
Totally.
one should I pick, which one is good. And I guess that's our role as an organization, what we should do to organize that for people. So it's easier to find the machine or the tool they need. But yeah, we've been neglecting that a bit because we didn't
Totally.
have a team to do that. But that's
Totally.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to clean that all up. And
It
yeah.
is interesting because I'm like messaging. We can chat about this, but I broke the drive shaft of my shredder. Don't know how. Uh, but now I'm like shopping for a new one, and I'm telling all these sellers like it's the Evolution Edition 1.1. It's like I don't even know what these things mean. I just know that I bought the Evolution drive shaft, the original one. It's like
Yeah,
who
exactly. No,
knows,
so
right?
I think that's on us to make sure you don't get lost in this whole ecosystem of plastic recycling tools. Like that should be our role to make it easier for people to find what they
Right.
need.
Right. I
Yeah.
think an interesting example, not to plug a channel sponsor out of the blue, but Multiboard is this like 3D printed tool wall, and they have 4,000 different parts, 50 different ways to mount it to your wall. Like, just it's super complex. And so they've created like an interactive website that can be like, okay, how do you want to do this? Do you want to be able to use hooks? Okay, then you need to mount it with an 8 millimeter offset so that you have room in the back end. And so like having that, God, that would have saved me so much freaking time. Like having that
Mm.
and be like, hey, what kind of plastic waste do you want to recycle? Okay, Shredder 1 is not, you need Shredder Pro if you're going to shred that kind. Like what volume? And just having, there are tools now that are, apparently he was telling me, the guy from Multiboard, that like can just build these kinds of like, when you go on the car websites, like which car is right for me. Gosh, that would save so much time. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, we always have many variables because on the one hand you have okay, which type of plastic? There are many types out there. What is the amount? It has a big influence on the machine you have.
yeah,
What's your budget? Are you looking at for the hobby scale or really like an industrial scale? And then also where are you in the world? Because
right,
is the machine available in that area? Because we don't ship like machines from a central place. We really have this network of machine builders. So
Right.
we're always, yeah, it's quite hard. But I would love to have that, exactly that. Like that's what you want as a user, I guess, no? To just say, I want to do this, what fits me.
I can ask
Yeah.
Jonathan how they did it. He might have hired someone, but it's like it's just the perfect, perfect tool for what you guys are doing. I
Mm.
have all kinds of ideas. We have to connect offline because I've just got like obviously I've been in Hebrew we say like breaking my teeth, like chewing on this and not succeeding for over a year at this point of trying to figure out. And ultimately, like interestingly enough, the big aha moments, the original shredder works great for 3D prints. You just have to go down to a 5 millimeter sieve instead of 8 millimeter. You need cooling, so some kind of active fan or something. But I think that's because I had so much friction in the
Mm.
system, which might be why the drive shaft got cut. And then you just have to aggressively dry the material once it's shredded. And if you get the moisture out, that's most of the process. It's actually alarming how easy it is to do if you have the equipment. Now, granted,
Mm.
it took me months to build the shredder, and learn about the fact that you can't direct drive a 3 horsepower motor to the shredder. But yeah,
Yeah, I think we also have an updated version of that shredder, which has a thicker shaft and also less of those friction problems. And I think also,
really,
especially if you do, if you do 3D printer waste, it tends to have a lower melting temperature. So if your machine heats up a bit, it can get clogged much more, which you don't have with PET, polypropylene. So these are also things the
oh,
machine was not designed for, because we
totally.
never really made it for 3D printing waste. Yeah.
Totally, and you just called it. You predicted the whole stack of problems that I had. Um, any ideas? So for those who don't know, it's a clean cut through the drive shaft. Any ideas how I managed to do that? I don't understand how I cut cleanly through the drive shaft.
To be honest, I think I had it once actually when shredding PLA, because I think we wanted to integrate 3D printing, but then we started working with PLA and shredding it and realized because the melting temperature is so low, this behaves completely different. And it
Right.
also broke the machine. I think I'm not sure if it broke the shaft or something else. But yeah, I think at some point you just have a very strong motor that wants to turn, but it's stuck. So something is going to break. And
Huh.
I guess it was the shaft in your case.
So you think
Yeah.
it probably had to do with the material heating up, melting, creating a blob, and then very strong motor. That's
That's
interesting.
what was in our case, but I'm not sure if it was. But I remember being surprised by that.
I
Yeah.
mean, what's interesting is for months I had metal shavings in all my material. And by the way, we can go to a
Mm.
different topic if you want to talk about it. I don't mean to turn you into my personal customer support, but for months I had metal shavings, and I was like, it must be the knives are not perfectly aligned. Eventually, it'll shave itself and kind of wear itself in. And then the minute the drive shaft broke, I was like, oh, I know where those metal shavings are coming from. So I think maybe I had a small piece of metal that was in between the washers and the plate, and it was just
Mm.
going around and around and around and cutting deeper and deeper in. That's my best bet. My best
Well, yeah, I
guess.
think in general, the I always thought before starting this project that the shredder would be the easy machine. If I think of like how to melt plastic, it's like that sounds very complex. But a shredder, you just chop stuff. I mean, you have a paper shredder, no problem.
Right.
But throughout the years, I noticed plastic is really one of the most complex materials to shred because it's very like chewy, so it doesn't break like
Right.
glass or stone. So you need a
Right.
lot of force. So the motor has a lot of force to shred the plastic. So if something
Right.
is not aligned, it can really slowly just eat itself. And because
Yeah.
the motor is so strong that it can do that to the metal. So it's very difficult machine in terms of alignment and stuff to have it all accurate. Yeah.
That is
So yeah,
uh, that is
I guess
true.
you found out.
I found out, and thank goodness, I'll give another plug to PCBWay because they saved my butt. I bent one drive shaft by just tightening the whole shredder down
Hmm.
too tight while it was connected to the gear, and it was off by a half a
Yeah.
millimeter, and just bent the shaft. And they just keep helping me, so thank goodness for them. I do see that there are kits for hand operated shredders, which that's pretty cool. So for those of
Yeah,
you who
which
want
is
to try
more
this at
for
home.
yeah, it's more for like you wouldn't have a production on that because it's
Sure.
very labor intense, but it's used a lot also for people that do events. So
Ah,
because the pressed plastic machines were used a lot for that, I didn't think of that originally as a use case, but apparently it was a lot in schools and just
Huh.
showing people like this is what you can do with plastic. So a hand shredder is a very low cost way to shred things. Yeah.
And they've done something genius, which I don't know. See, this is why I should just browse around here more often. I'm going to show you guys what they've done. But they have a successive series of bins, which I assume have thinner and thinner mesh, which is very smart. And then you regrind the top layer. Oh, that's so clever.
Are you looking on the community platform, or
I'm
where are
looking
you?
on the bazaar at someone who's
Ah,
selling a full kit for the hand shredder. But you're right, it's crazy how much people have remixed. It
yeah.
looks totally different than your shredder. How do you feel about that? Because on the one hand, great, people are improving the design. On the other hand, it's on your bazaar and you have no idea if it's going to work or be reliable. How do you kind of square that away?
Yeah, so it's hard because one of the original things of like somewhat of a traditional way to fund an open source project is you just sell the product. Like
Mm-hmm.
Pusa sells their printers, Adreno sells their boards, but we never really wanted to ship recycling machines from the Netherlands around the
Yeah.
world. We figured ideally they're built locally. So we spend a lot of time in having these local machine builders everywhere so they can build it locally, earn the income locally, and you can buy
Mm-hmm.
it locally. But as an effect of that, everyone builds it slightly different and you don't have any quality control,
Right.
um, which makes it, yeah. So I think that's still something that we want to integrate more, which is like, how do you, it's a bit similar to what you say before. How do you find the machine that fits you best? But also, how do you make sure the one with the good quality stands out and the non good quality not? How do you make sure so this one is safe, this one not, this one is certified? And because it's
Right.
way more difficult in our case because it's such a decentralized project. Um,
It
yeah.
is. And like, is there on the bazaar? I'm just asking now with my MBA hat, do you guys earn a commission on sales of the bazaar or how does that work?
Yeah, so this was actually one of the things we developed to try to find an income model for the project.
Mm-hmm.
So, with on the one hand, we see it's useful because it's easier for people to buy and sell their recycling equipment or
Right.
shredded material, and we could then get like 5% of all the
Yep.
sales to sustain the project. But in reality, sustaining a global marketplace like the software is more than what it earns with the 5%.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, so I think we're now a bit at that stage. Like, does this make sense for the project? Because it's still a useful tool for the community. Like,
Totally.
like you get the shredder there, so it helps people to get their equipment. But there is a cost for that for the project still. Yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting. It makes you wonder, like, what is the percentage, because Apple is not, Apple's charging 20%. I think they're doing less than you are. 20%
yeah,
for software, right? So it makes you wonder, like 20%, maybe not for an open source project, but 10 feels fair, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think this is still a version 5 thing to look into as well. Yeah, what to do with the bazaar and how can we make sure it does financially make more sense.
I'm going to be knocking down your door to see how I can help with all of this.
Cool.
What are some of the challenges that you hope to solve? So obviously, everything you've built with all these machines, really great with HDPE, really great with a lot of the industrial plastics, great for making sheets, great for injection molding. Are there kind of use cases or challenges or plastics or things where you're like, in V5, I really hope we can solve this, besides obviously the financial component?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why I figured we need to build a version 5 is realizing we've been working on like polypropylene, polyethylene, like polystyrene, kind of the common types of plastic, and kind of mm, if plastic gets recycled, it's usually those ones.
Right.
But then you have this whole world of complex plastics, like a bag of crisps or something, which is a bit laminated, like it
Oh,
doesn't get industrially recycled. Plexiglass, 3D printer waste, sort of this very sort of niche. I mean, there are large
right.
waste streams, but it's not something the industry takes care of. But they all need solutions to be recycled, and
Totally.
it's very hard for an industry to do this and to scale up and to mobilize the people to find those plastics and to collect them. And I think that's a bit where fresh plastic can be very valuable to
Totally.
make sure all those waste streams get covered, and they all need a very specific, different kind of processing method.
I love
So
that.
we would
The
like to
complex
work
plastics
more
is,
on
is
those.
fascinating. And I think a lot about one of my big takeaways with I said, oh, if you have the process, everything works perfectly. A big part of the process was learning, like, uh, another saying in Hebrew, we say, if you have a doubt, there's no doubt, meaning like it's never worth the risk to put something in the shredder that you're not 100% sure is the material you think. It's just never worth it, because 3 months later, you'll have a little granule of ABS that goes through and contaminates another batch. So there's a lot of situations, I'm sure generally in recycling, but also in 3D printing, right? If we're purging one material to another, or if you just printed something 2 years ago, you don't remember what material it is, the machine to scan it is like $2,000, right? So one thing that I've been thinking is really fascinating is how can I use plastic in a process that is agnostic to contamination? Now, I think probably the injection molder machine that you guys already did is reasonably agnostic to 2% ABS mixed in with PLA. But like, how can I use plastic that is contaminated by other plastics?
Yeah, I think one of the underlying principle of the project is that it's called precious plastic. So we want to make
Right,
like the plastic we use into something precious.
right.
Because the current products made from plastic, many are like very cheap. They cost like 10 cents, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, to make those plastics, it's super complex because it's very high performance. It needs to be super fast, super cheap, low amount of plastic. So those products do not want to work with any contaminated plastic because it either slows down our production, or it just mixes up a whole batch. And I think one of the things Fresh Plastic does is just say, okay, we take a bit more time to produce the thing, and it can use a bit more plastic. And those variables give you a lot of room to make a different kind of product that can work better with a slightly contaminated plastic. Because I think in the end, if you want more recycled plastic, you need to have higher tolerances for that you can
Totally.
accept more types of plastic, because you're never going to have it perfectly homogeneous like a virgin plastic. So you need
Totally.
to figure out applications on how to use the plastic that is not perfect, basically.
Totally. I
But
love
yeah.
that. That's, I think, what I'm most excited about, because one, I'm lazy, right? And I've had this stuff stored, as every 3D printing person I talk to, like, you just have bags and bags of PLA sitting around collecting dust, literally. And eventually something's gonna work its way in. One piece of PETG, or as I learned the hard way, one tiny piece of ABS.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a real shame to throw out 20 kilos of material because of that. So
Which
I'm
happens a
pretty
lot on
excited.
an industrial scale. Like they
Oh
just throw
yes.
massive batches away because of a little thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you I've gotten into this like YouTube rabbit hole of, I think it's Business Insider or Insider does these amazing videos called Worldwide Waste, and in each one they follow an entrepreneur, usually in the developing world, but it's like this person is figuring out a way to deal with sphagnum moss that is washing up on beaches, or this person figured out a way to recycle tires into playgrounds. I'm obsessed with this. Like, I could watch it
Mm.
all day.
Yeah, they're cool. They're very intuitive, or what do you call? Yeah, like creative solutions usually, no, to like a
Ah, I love
problem.
it.
Yeah.
I love the idea
Yeah.
of getting something for free and turning it into your product. Or in a lot of
Hmm.
these cases, and this is a cool thing as well for 3D printing waste, they're getting paid to collect the waste. Like, companies are like, we'll pay you, $100 a pallet. Just take this crap away from us. Um, I think that's
Yeah, I
really
think that was
exciting.
also one of the starting points for Fresh Plastic, or the opportunity we saw was, on the one hand, people say, there's a pile of trash here in my environment. I don't like it. And on the other hand, hearing it's a material that can be recycled. So it's like a free material laying around. So it also
Yeah,
felt, if you give people the tool to do something with that material, you clean up and you have a free material. And I think I still
totally.
see that as a benefit of plastic. Same as we have with metal, no? You don't throw your metal away. It's worth something. You can bring it to a
Totally.
person or even collect it. And I think we just need to try to get plastic to the same level where it's like a valuable material you don't just throw away.
That is a very valid point. I hadn't even thought about, like, plastic to us is consumable. When I went, I needed some, like, basically scrap offcuts of aluminum for learning CNC, and I went to, a machine shop or whatever. And I was like, I just want to dig and, take some of your trash. And he's like, there's no trash here. This is
Yeah, it
all
has a value, no?
expensive raw material and you're going to pay by the gram. It's like, right. Why isn't it that way for plastic or wood,
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
way?
Which also
Offcuts
brings
are,
an incentive for all the people. Like you don't, if you see metal, even cans, no, they get picked up because they have a value of aluminum to it. So it's
totally,
sort of, yeah. To
totally.
me, it's not very
What
logical. It's a resource, and there's,
I
there's
love
value
it.
to it.
What are some of, or what is the coolest thing that you've seen that happened as a result of all the hard work that you guys have put in? Like, is there a story or something that we can end on where you're just like, oh wow, the juice was worth the squeeze?
Yeah, I think it's a bit sad that in the beginning I feel I knew all the workspaces, and even when I was traveling, I visited them, and but nowadays there are so many that I kind of lose track. I just it's too much for me to
That's
keep an
great.
eye on. In a
That's
way, it's great,
adorable.
yeah, yeah. But I feel like I lose a bit uh, the overview. But I think I love it when people just figure out that thing that I think needs to be developed, and they just figure out that new material to work with, or that new little machine, or that new hack. I
Yeah.
think that's, for me, gives a lot of hope, knowing that we're not the only ones trying to move it forward, but there are other people around the world trying to find solutions for this, and then also sharing them open source online back. It feels like
Yes.
that's kind of, yeah. I think
I love
that's
it.
what I
I love
love
it.
the most about it.
And I want to publicly commit because you were very good about telling me I'll come on the podcast, but I want you to share everything you've learned on the platform so people don't have to go through a full YouTube video. So publicly, I'm committing that I'm posting my project and getting everything up as I promised to do.
Yes,
Dave,
please
this
hold
was
in
an
responsible YouTube comments.
yeah. This was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed getting a chat with you. I do hope you'll take me up on the offer to help in any way that I possibly can. And you're always welcome to come back and tell us about V5 or
Cool,
V6.
sounds good. Yeah,
All right, my
cool.
friend. Thanks very much
Thanks a lot.
again. I'll take us out and we can debrief. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infill Podcast. For show notes or links to anything mentioned in today's episode, visit thenextlayer.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to leave us a review wherever you're listening, or click the like button to let us know. And consider subscribing to The Next Layer on YouTube so you can tune in live and participate in the next conversation. We'll see you on The Next Layer.